Hello, my name is Anthony James, and today I am presenting in my persuasive speech about one topic that I had in my mind. You see, growing up, I've been a musical person. I've been part of music. My family's been a part of music for years, and the one instrument that's been talking to me for the past all my life is drums. And once I got more into the flavor of getting to know drums more, I started to get a lot more involved in the more of the instruments in the drum family, which henceforth being the name percussion. Now, during this speech, I'll tell you what it means, what's the instruments a part of it, and how does it inflict me in life. So, here we go. Sit back, enjoy, and please leave me any feedback if you need to. Now, why I started doing the percussion thing, you may ask. I just felt like, percussion was calling to me in another sense of my mind. I just felt like it was calling to me in another way that I could express myself more and, get more popularity into that. Then kind of found out how much exposure percussion has on my life and on everybody else in my family. But what is percussion, you may ask? Well, percussion goes back all the way to the early BC in Egypt, 5500 BC to be exact. You see, in the article I got, it says here, drums started from the early 5500 BC in Egypt and in ancient Mesopotamia, which is basically started back in Egypt in not here in the US. It came in the US probably, I would say, around the 1800s, I guess, give or take. And the first ever instrument they had that was a part of it were called beaters, and they were mostly used for ceremonies. So, for example, you can see if it's a inauguration of their type back in where they're from, they would use that as their way of trying to celebrate anything like a birthday or like a big event going on, a new building, whatever happened in Egypt. They would use those drums for the rhythm and for ceremonies they used and at that time period. Over time, it starts going more and more years and years later in the BC eras. And let's go take a trip over to China, because that's where every instrument, everything is created. And you see, that's where I get into the part where I don't talk just about every other instrument before. I talk about the drums, aka being the drum set. Now, the drum set was being made in ancient China, and of course, it was just made like a big bass drum, a little crash cymbal on the bottom, the beater down there where the foot is to make the, sounds, and another cymbal at the top with one tom and one snare, at the end of it, like the old school type snare, type of, drum set. But the first ever drum set was actually made in Greece and Syria. So I guess they wanted to make the first one to, put a beat on things, But as I kept on reading and reading, I learned more and more about where percussion came from and how many instruments is in percussion and how many instruments were made for the first time ever in percussion. But enough about the history. Let's go on to the actual categories of percussion instruments. First, the untuned percussion instruments, which I love very dearly. We have the snare drum, the bass drum, the anvils, the jingles, and the triangles. My favorite one, the snare drum. Now, the snare drum is a bass type of drum where it has the wood base that looks like a circle. You have to put it, center like this, a top and a bottom rim. You have the thing that makes it the magical sound of a snare on the bottom called the snares. Like there's metal, there's plastic ones. It don't matter which one. It's on the bottom. And it has that snare type of sound. Now, the other one is called the bass drum. The bass drum is most like a snare, but bigger, with a bigger, wider sound. Just don't play too hard and you will break the head. That's mainly the gist of it. Now, further on, you have the tone percussion instruments, which are called the xylophone, the marimba, the glockenspiels, the bells, the crodels, and etc., etc. Xylophones are basically like, picture a piano, but in percussion form. It's like a piano, but you have to use mallets to find the right notes and get the right pitch as a piano. Marimba is the same thing, but it's more like wood, and you have to be delicate with it, or else you'll crack it, and you'll have to pay for another one. Glockenspiels are the same thing as bells, so it's basically the same thing. It's like the bells I've had and grew up with, they were in like this case. You open it up, and there's the sound of the bells, and you need actual metal mallets or you can use rubber mallets that doesn't have the sound like a piano or better. And the crodels, I've never seen those before, but I know they're part of the percussion.